Hello viewers, today's topic is about interpretation with reference to the types of plays. Now why this topic? Because on the first place, it seems to belong more to dramatic literature than to theatre. The answer to this is that theatre includes in itself the art of dramatic literature, as well as without knowing about the nature of the content, director cannot work on the nature of the production itself. Discussion about the dramatic concepts like dramatic conflict, progression, point of attack has already been made in the previous parts of the series. But the nature and degree of their elasticity can be understood only if the various types and styles of plays are understood. The director has to go about his process of production according to the category of the play. Though it may differ in approach, generally in the same category also, because all the plays in the same category may not be similarly structured or be alike. Now, major divisions of such categories of types of plays are tragedy, melodrama, comedy and farce, though many elements of one type of play may be present in other type of play. So, hard and fast rule may not apply in them. For example, many Greek plays are pure tragedies, and many Shakespeare's tragedies include the element of high comedy in them. But mainly 4 types of drama already mentioned are 4 dominant ways of looking at life. These may include one more type, that is serious drama, which may not be exclusively tragic, but may include elements of tragedy in more subtle or thought-provoking situation or character presented in a way that it has to go through very hard, harsh, struggling impulses, characters fighting or wrestling with outward forces, spiritual or social antagonism is tragedy. The struggle here is so intense, of such dimension and so great, but it leads to disaster. But it exalts the position of the character or the protagonist. It gives a clear indication of man's will and his capacity for greatness. It lifts them above the commonplace, exemplifies the dynamic strength of human will. It leads them to suffer greatly. The tragedies of Shakespeare like Othello, Hamlet, King Lear are examples of these kind of tragedies. In Indian drama, Vijay Tendulkar's play Sakharam Binder is best example of such type of play, where all the 3 characters Sakharam, Lakshmi and Champa are doomed to suffer the highest point of emotional and mental crisis and a doom's destiny in the end. So is Mohan Rakesh Ashad Ka Ek Din, Malika losing everything at the altar of love, and Kalidas, in spite of professional excellence, falls flat at the altar of destiny. So in a tragedy, the stakes are also of the highest value. In Macbeth, it is crown and the founding of a dynasty. In Ashad Ka Ek Din, it is achieving professional excellence. In King Lear, it is achieving of the dynasty or kingship of King Lear. So when stakes are very high or larger, it involves point of reference, then the personal events, social process, deity, or it may be called fate. These concepts have been interpreted differently in different periods. Now, what are the different central forms in a tragedy? Different variations of characters or different forms of issues? It may be some physical catastrophe, frustration, loss of power, or some other kind of loss of authority, of aristocracy, loss of a very dear or bonded relationship, a struggling mass hero, etc. Shakespeare's Hamlet, Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard, Three Sisters, Girish Karnad's Tughlaq, Dharmveer Bharti's Andha Yug are such examples. One important factor here is that authors may have written such plays as tragedies or comedies. It mainly depends on the director as to how he determines to consider these plays. For example, if a director wants to present The Merchant of Venice as tragedy of social injustice, would have to make it to create a tragic and not romantic atmosphere through the interpretation of the dialogues and appropriate lighting, setting, costumes, movements, and musical effects. Casting also has to be taken care of, like selecting a very somber, dignified, and intense actor as Shylock. Stage business and delivery of lines would have to support the tragic interpretation. Similarly, if Khamosh Adalat Jari Hai by Vijay Tendulkar is to be presented as a tragedy, the performance of the main protagonist Benare has to be very intense, sweet, innocent looking, justifying even her boisterous and satirical lines as expression of her inner heart, including her relationship with Samat as well as parrot in a cage. Every period has altered its definition of tragedy according to practices followed by the playwrights or according to a particular social or political point of view. Writers and directors who have opted for the tragedy have the opinion that it is able to leave considerable impact on society. As a general rule, tragic characters have been those whose sufferings could affect the entire society. Aristotle's concept of tragedy calls for the need of catharsis, which in other words is purgation, that is purging of certain qualities or characteristics. Through fear and pity, audience members along with the actors rid themselves of negative tendencies similar to those of the character in the tragedy. Shakespeare's character Lady Macbeth in the play Macbeth fits into this definition of Aristotle. For her unrelented pursuit of power, however evil the means of obtaining it, her character fits Aristotle's profile of illustrious figure whose flaws need to be purged for the good of society. 20th century view of tragedy is aptly described by Arthur Miller, whose play Death of a Salesman is representative of changing views of the 20th century. In his play, main character Willy Loman is an ordinary man living an ordinary life. As a young man, he believed that anyone could attain success through hard work, and with success would come love and acceptance. His circumstances worsen to a point where he no longer believes in American dream, and in his despair he kills himself. So, Arthur Miller believes that the common man is as apt a subject for tragedy in its highest sense as kings were. He feels that tragic feeling is evoked in us when we are in the presence of a character who is ready to lay down his life to secure one thing, his sense of personal dignity. From Medea, the Greek plays characters, to Shakespeare's characters, the underlying struggle is that of the individual attempting to gain his rightful position in society. Now there is one more theory. Augusto Boal, in his book Theatre of the Oppressed, has given totally different perspective and has negated the theory of Aristotle. He says Aristotle's concept of tragedy is basically a theory of inaction. He is against his purgative system, the objective of which is to eliminate the sense of revolution even before it takes place. On the contrary, he says, we want to stimulate the spectator to transform society, to engage in revolutionary action. In that case, we will have to seek another poetics. Boal has accused Greek tragedy of inventing the tragic flaw and says that this purgation prevents needed change in society. This flaw has to be purged to purge the impulse of revolution. So, Miller and Auguste Boal proposed definitions of tragedy that suit the audiences of their time. This second type of play, that is melodrama, its term was derived from the Greek word melos, which means music. Melodrama has been developed from a form of drama wherein music inserted between sections of dialogues express the emotional content of the scene. It leads towards oversimplification of emotion in the same way as used in our commercial Hindi cinema. The hero or heroine in a melodrama represents situation where they are caught in the wicked actions of the villains and they go through many emotional upheavals due to this entrapment. Any play of any form, if presented with the use of over-the-board treatment of dialogues, situations and characters, can become melodramatic, best example of which in India has been Parsi theatre in earlier 20th century. And play productions of the 1930s to 50s or early 60s, particularly of IPTA and progressive theatre movement in Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Lahore and some other cities. Today, soap operas on television make extensive use of music and other melodramatic conventions to underline important emotional moments and high-charged emotional circumstances. Another form of drama is serious drama. This type of play has a particular kind of subtlety, dignity, a point of reference, tragic overtones or details, and a general tone of seriousness in contrast to emotionality, depression and sadness of tragedy and melodrama. It does not provide catastrophic conclusion for the main characters. The conclusion may even be hopeful. The term tragicomedy was also used for this kind of form. It was also employed by the Elizabethan playwrights and producers. Considered as a mood or as treatment of experience, this is especially important in the tone of a production. It does not present the emotions of characters as thoroughly as tragedy. It does not glow so darkly and generally possesses less elevation in character and struggle. If the production of a non-tragic, serious play were to indulge in a constantly dark as of melodrama and serious drama. One reason for this may be that comedy has mainly included ordinary characters and everyday problems. Though comedy has always been more popular form of entertainment, but it has never been thought of as an equally potent form or even as an effective alternative to tragedy for conveying social message or for awareness of social change. But those who consider comedy as a tool of entertainment and social change look at comedy as a way of looking at life with the mind rather than with passion. Life, when looked through this mirror, becomes comparatively light and playful. It includes smiles, maybe laughter, and also requires the audience to have detached viewpoint instead of emotional involvement. This is particularly true of Moliere's comedies. Also Aristophanes' Lysistrata, Ben Jonson's Volpeno, and Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion possess a basic outlook that is much more serious. What makes them comedies is a certain lightness in treatment, an intelligence that is never overwhelmed by life's pain, and triumphant redemption of the spirit of the play. If it has intelligent, thoughtful laughter, it has thoughtful comedy. It is the attitude and the tone that determines the mood and whether it is a comedy or not. It is only the director who can find these punches of comic mood or altitude in a play. A comedy of character calls for a very meticulous characterization, whereas a comedy of manners needs special attention to all aspects of social behavior, elegance in gestures, movements, fashion, costumes, etc. Production may require to emphasize different elements in a play. It may combine romance, comedy of manners, character-based comedy, etc. Like tragedy, comedy also has many forms. Two significant categories are comedy of manners and farce. Comedy of manners takes up mainly trendy and upper class characters. Their behavior is highly suspect. Oscar Wilde was one of the great practitioners of comedy of manners. His major play is The Importance of Being Earnest. Comedy of manners also takes up witty, urbane language. Farce is comedy at its broadest and its emphasis is on physical humor. Traditional farces were written by playwrights like George Faden in late 19th and early 20th century. His comedy, A Flea in Her Ear, has been frequently performed in America and Europe. Indian example of farcical comedies are Sarveshwar Dayal Saksena's Bakri and many farces routinely performed at improvised stages of colleges and universities throughout India. All these types of dramas, when chosen or taken up for production by the directors, it becomes their duty to understand the form or type of drama and evolve a form of production in accordance with the needs and requirements of those types of plays. Not having the know-how or perspective of these types of plays would have a major disadvantage for the director in order to completely interpret the play in its truest sense.